Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, let's first get your take on Ukraine. I think you and I are old Reagan doctrine guys. No American boots on the ground. Provide the weaponry like Reagan provided the Mujahideen, the Contra rebels. Let them fight their own fight. And the Trump doctrine. Give them the force that is needed to win the war.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We ought to be providing the weapons for the Ukrainians to defend themselves. We ought to be providing the Polish MiGs. We ought to be providing S-300s and Javelins and Stingers. And the Biden administration is slow walking all of that. And then number two, we ought to be going after Putin's revenue. And that means oil and gas. That means American energy production. And Biden is so much in hock to the Green New Deal radicals that he's unwilling to step up American energy production. You know, I got to say, Sean, watching the cascade of blunders from Biden, that's 5 gaffes in 48 hours. I don't recall ever seeing an American president mess things up so badly, from calling for regime change, then calling that back, from suggesting America would launch chemical weapons to walking that back, from suggesting the 82nd Airborne would be sent to Ukraine to calling that back. He also said sanctions never work, despite their talking points having been for months that the threat of sanctions is precisely why he waived sanctions on Nord Stream 2. And I got to say, there's a 5th gaffe in the segment you played right at the beginning of the show. When Biden was trying to explain all of this, he said, well, the explanation is that Americans are training Ukrainian troops in Poland. What? Okay, if that's the case, I don't know about it. But if that's the case, that is surely classified, and it may be that he's explaining classified secrets on national television. Sean, this is like Mr. Magoo as president, where every time he explains one thing, it gets worse and worse and worse, and we've got nuclear weapons pointed at each other. It is incredibly dangerous, this kind of presidential weakness.
And our enemies see it, and our allies see it, and it is extraordinarily dangerous. And now we know there's not enough money budgeted for our military and for Ukraine military equipment. Now they want to tax unrealized or mythical or capital gains, which may never materialize. And then they want the corporate tax increased dramatically, Senator. And there's one problem with raising the corporate tax. Corporations don't pay taxes. What they do is they pass that tax right on to the consumer, and we already have a 40-year high of inflation. Not a good idea in my mind.
No, that's exactly right. Joe Biden's budget and the socialists and the Democratic Party, they want to jack up taxes on Americans across this country. You know, this budget proposes taking the national debt all the way up to $45 trillion. That is a staggering amount. And one of the amazing things about Biden's budget is it's based on old, outdated numbers, so it assumes inflation is still down at 2%. We're seeing record high inflation of 8%, and the Biden budget numbers laughably assume that the trillions they've spent already hasn't caused inflation. And by the way, another way of understanding Biden's proposal to tax unrealized gains is that Biden is proposing taxing you on inflation, because unrealized gains, one of the major things that causes that is inflation, and Biden's out-of-control spending and debt is producing crushing inflation on the American people.
Well said, Senator. Scary times, I will say that. Yeah. We need the adults back in office sooner than later. Thank you for being with us.